Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Nothing for Nothing Leaves Nothing podcast. I am your host, Lewis, and today's topic, politics. Let's talk about it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with another podcast of the Nothing for Nothing Leaves Nothing. So, want to say welcome into the episode. In this particular episode, we're going to talk about, obviously, what's going on currently in the world, which is we have a presidential election coming up. And this has bred a lot of tension and issues for everyone in the country. And first off, I'm going to start by saying I'm not going to say which candidate I'm voting for, obviously, or anything of that nature, but we're going to talk in general when it comes to politics for whatever side you're on, whether you're on the right, left, Democrat, Republican, all that good jazz. So for me, just watching the climate in the aspect of what's going on, it's crazy to see how people can be so up in odds with each other about politics and about, what this candidate's doing, what this other candidate's doing, how things are going, and things of that nature. I've always held true to the fact, especially when it comes to politics, that no matter which side you're on, it's the lesser of two evils. And the reason I've always said that is because, obviously, for people to get into office, they have backers and all that good stuff, right? So, with backers come different responsibilities. So, when candidates usually get into office, whether it's local government, you start from a state level to the federal level. From a state level to the federal level, you see people, you campaign, right? It's like, think about your folks back in high school when you had, people voting for, prom queen, homecoming king and queen and all that good jazz, right? What were they doing? On a lesser scale, they were walking around, hey, vote for me because of this, or that, and the third, or whatever, and stuff like that. Or student, like if you have a student body of, student president, all that kind of stuff, right? So these offices, man, have responsibilities to the nation as a whole. And a lot of times, I think people tend to look at that, and some people tend to miss the full aspect and grasp of what that means and the accountability that needs to be held when it comes to, who you're putting in a particular office, right? So when you think about that, the one thing I always tell people, like especially when we get into talks of politics, because to me it's always a fun conversation, because it's one of those things where, if I'm being honest, I feel like can you ever truly be wrong from a political standpoint, right? That political belief, that political view is your belief, it's your view. So for somebody to tell you that your view or your belief is wrong, it's kind of a messed up path to walk on, right? So. But even with that being said, it's just one of those things, man, like I said, especially right now, where it's all over the place. I mean, you can sit on YouTube and just see videos upon videos upon videos. You can pull up podcasts upon podcasts. You can turn on the TV, and if you're on CNN or watching Fox News, you got information coming from different things. And the one thing, like, I've done and I've continued to do, and like on my last podcast, I was talking about truth. And being true to yourself and understanding, what your thought process is, what you feel, and how you live your life based off of your truth, which is, from you internally, like what your viewpoints are and what your perspective on things is. From a political standpoint, it's the same thing. But you should I always tell people, educate yourself. In anything in life, you should always educate yourself. Whether it's relationships, educating yourself about relationships. So that means, like, if you're involved with a person, getting to know who that person is and understanding that there are a lot of things about that person you may like or may not like. There are things about that person you're going to like, and you got a decision to make to figure out if this is the person you want to be with or not. Same thing when it comes to picking a job and a career. A lot of times you pick a career. Why? Because you're looking for what can this career do for you, or what can this job do for you from a financial standpoint, because obviously you need money to survive. But do your research on it. A lot of times people will take a job just because it's paying more money. And then you get into a job and realize that I don't like doing this, but I'm making this money, so I guess I'll just tough it out. And you're just miserable, right? As you become, you're just existing in that sense. When you look at politics, the one good thing about, I would say, today's age and time is information is a lot easier to grasp. And what does that mean? So when it comes to policies and how things are broken down, a lot of times people pick based off of, which you don't want, but it's happened. People pick based off of race. People pick based off of, just because they like a candidate because of, whatever, something that they said pretty much sparked. And I think a lot of times people miss the true aspect of looking at policies and diving into these policies, and not just diving into a policy just to read them like, oh, they said they're going to do this. Like when you look at a bill that is sent to Congress and through the House and things of that nature, right? When you look at those things that are put together, these things are tons and tons and tons of pages, right? Just different things in there. But when you hear about it, it's like, well, this bill is for the money for this, or this bill is for money for this. And then people be like, well, why doesn't it get passed? Why isn't stuff making its way through? Why is there such an issue with it? And it's not so much a lot of times it's the main focus point that they put out there, but there's always extra stuff in there. So when they write a bill or something that's getting put through government, right? A government document that's getting pushed through for approval or whatever, the people putting it together have their main focus of what they want done, right? We have checks and balances for a reason. Sometimes people feel like those checks and balances don't really hold up or they don't do anything because based off of Democrat, Republican, or whatever, you get pushback because everybody's trying to edge out. One side is trying to edge out the other to get a particular point or particular thing. But always look at those things in detail. Go through peel the layers back, as they say, right? Peel the onion. I'm still in a quote from City Church, my church that I go to, for a program we had. But peel the onion back. Like, actually, if you're looking at something and you want to understand something, look at it in this context. When those documents are drafted and drawn and they're put up for review or whatever, you can get access to that, especially in today's world, because everything is at your fingertips. Internet, Google, web databases, or whatever. Do your research. Pull information and look at the stuff that was actually put there. You might have and this is just for example, so my heavy political folks out there, because I am no expert. I'm just talking from my own experience of what I'm seeing. When you look at how those things are drafted, a lot of times they will put something together and they might, like I said, they'll have their main point, but then they'll slip in some other stuff in there. Or there'll be stuff in there but they're only talking about the main talking point of that particular document. And when you don't have all the facts, you're going based off of, which I advise people not to do at all, but people do it all the time. You're not going based off of facts. You're going based off of what you're hearing. I did a podcast a while back talking about a hive mentality, and especially when it comes to politics in general, there's a lot of hive mentality that goes on, right? You'll listen to folks on one side, they're voting for this person because their skin color is this. You're voting for this person because they said, or their skin color is that, and when you look at those things, especially with how you're putting people into office, do the research. Look at these people. Dive into their policies. If they held offices from a state level, from a regional section level, from when they were at, from city levels and stuff like that, city council members and all that kind of stuff. Look, that stuff is all, like I said, we have public documentation for a reason. Dig into that and look into it, right? Take your time and do your due diligence and make a sound decision. When you make big decisions in life, usually the smart way to do it, which some people do, some people don't. If you don't, I pray you get yourself together and do it at some point. But when you're making those decisions, you should be able to make an educated decision whichever way that is, whether it's right, left, up, down, whatever your decision you're making, you should be able to make a sound decision. Have all the information, have all the facts, gather all that information, examine it with an open eye, and then make a decision. A lot of times, especially now, what you see going on is people are making decisions, man, and some people don't even have a clue. And I'm not saying that's everybody, but a good chunk of folks is making decisions based off of what they perceive is going on, what they perceive is going to happen, and what they think is going to happen. If you look at politics over the years and look at the breakdown, a lot of the stuff that every politician has one main sticking point, right? That's their go-to. That's their main goal when they get into whatever office they're going into. They're like, I have to accomplish this. Most do. They most, for the most part, usually accomplish whatever that main goal was, and that's their, their sticking point for their time in office. Like I said, for whatever level office that it is. But there are a lot of other stuff that they promise and put out there. I'm gonna do this and do this and do this, and that crap never happens. And then you go back and pull their track record, and then you see that a lot of the stuff that they always promise that they're going to do, they don't end up doing at all. So now you end up with a situation where you're misinformed, and you pick somebody who the stuff that they said, there is no track record to show that the stuff that they said they're going to do, they're actually going to do. And when you look at that, it's like, okay, well, what kind of situation am I putting myself to? What kind of situation am I putting the country into? Obviously, the biggest thing about this whole situation is you have to get out there and vote. And a lot of people are like, I'm not voting because I don't like neither one of them. True, fair. If that's the way you feel about the political status at the moment, cool. But then don't be those people that don't vote. And everybody got those people that complain, right? It's like being at your job, and you have folks on the job where it's like, man, I'm not staying late. I'm not helping them with this. I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. And then when the crap stuff starts coming out, they're like, why did this happen? Or let me rephrase it. When they ask for feedback on certain things, and they're like, hey, let's get your guys' feedback on, how things are going or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, I'm not answering this. This is stupid. They don't never listen to nobody, whatever. And then when stuff start coming down the ejector, they're like, man, why are we doing this? Like, who came up with this idea? Why did they do X, Y, Z? And then you're like, yeah, they asked a bunch of people about it. Nobody responded, so they made a decision to go this direction. Well, that makes no sense. That was dumb. Well, when you had the opportunity to speak, you should have spoke. And like not this past Sunday, Sunday before last, our church, our pastor he did a sermon, and it was based on politics. And obviously, people, when you hear politics in church, people are like, ugh, people get that cringe look. But his sermon was spot on. It was just hitting right to the T. And the main premise of the sermon was to say that just because you have different viewpoints or you disagree on something doesn't mean you have to disagree and be disrespectful about it or angry or have vitriol or whatever. He'll say you can disagree respectfully. You can love radically without saying or being harmful to the other people around you. Like, it's just watching and looking at the scope of things, man. Like, from this standpoint, this election, it's like, it's big. It's big. And people are like, look, man, like, this has major implications for a lot of things going on for the country and how things are going to shape out and, how things are supposed to break down. And it's like, if you know something is that important, why would you halfway your process in making a decision? And what I mean by halfway that is, if you're taking a test for school and the test is 200 questions, it's a bunch of information up there and you need to study. If you don't study, you're going to get a crappy result. Correct? You're going to make poor decisions. You're going to make bad decisions when answering questions that if you had studied, you would have knew the answer to the question. Same thing happens in politics. If you don't do your proper research, you don't do your proper due diligence and vet the things that are being said and vet the things that are put out there, how can you make an informed decision and a proper decision? And and I've seen it, man. I've seen people on both sides of it. I'm just like, man, it's scary because, like I said, things become a hive mentality. People tend to get into, especially when it comes to politics and things going on. People get into this hive mentality of, man, I'm voting this way because of this. And then you ask a question like, okay, well, why are you voting for this person? Why are you voting for that person? And they can't give you a solid answer. And that's the thing that trips me out. I'm like, you can't give me a solid answer on why. And I see it, like, you see it around. And then, like I said, if you go on YouTube or, I wouldn't say more so on CNN because those folks, educated folks, so they talk a little bit differently. They talk a little around people. But, like, if you just watch YouTube, Instagram, and just listen to people speak. And it's, to me, like, the one thing I would say about life now and just interacting with folks, I'm like, I just love to hear people talk about different things. And the reason I so love to hear people talk is because To listen to how people's minds work and process things, it will trip you out. And the reason I say it will trip you out is because you will sit there and be looking at us like, this person is not making a sound decision. And granted, I'm not the judge. I'm not God Almighty to say, hey, this person's not making a sound decision. But the reason I say that is because if you're pulling certain information or certain information about a topic and somebody's like, yeah, man, this is this and this is this. And you're like, does this person know? And you can tell from having a conversation with certain people, they just don't know. And if you're like, you don't know, you don't know. But the only way to educate yourself is, like I said, you have to do your homework. You got to do your due diligence. You got to do your research. You got to get out there, pull this information. You got to get out there and look into it, and not so much be focused on what the world around you is saying. What are you seeing? What information do you have? What information are you pulling? What are you looking at? And if you can do that, like I said, I feel people will be able to make a real sound decision and an accurate decision based off of what they're seeing. A lot of times, like when you look at politics and all, the thing that always trips me out is like, why can't they just sit down and work together? Like, you got two separate parties, and sometimes these cats is all over the place. Like, the one is saying this, the other one is saying this, and you just like stuck, and the American people are just stuck in the middle. Like, what is going on? I don't understand. And a lot of times you don't understand. So how do you get understanding and clearance, or get understanding about something? You get understanding by pulling information, reading it, looking into it, examining it, studying it to find out where the truth is. The only way you know about what something is by learning, right? You have to learn and understand what is actually being put out there and how it's being portrayed, so you can have an understanding of taking the blinders off and looking at something clear-eyed and with clear understanding to know, like, all right, this is some stuff, right? What is going on here? What are we doing? What are they doing? How are they perceiving this? What are they putting out there? How are they putting this out there? And I believe, man, if everybody do that, you will be good to go. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say which side of the fence I'm on, because I won't do that, especially for a podcast thing. My viewpoint is my viewpoint, but I just say as a caveat to try to help some folks out. If you're out there trying to figure out what's going on, like I said, do your research, do your due diligence, gather the information that you need, and cipher through. Like I said, treat it like a test. If you want to get that A, or you want to make the best decisions on your test, you study. If you don't study, you get crappy grades. You get crappy grades, you can't get upset with nobody but yourself because you didn't do the stuff that you were supposed to do to make sure that you can take care of your responsibilities where you need to take care of them. That's just the way I see it. But yeah, I mean, that's that's how this whole, like I said, political thing is shaking itself out. Every day is something new. Every day the conversations are different. Every day, just the way things are portrayed and put out there, it just makes you sit back and think and wonder, like, what in the world, right? And then you go back and look at, previous people in office and how they did things, and you start trying to have an understanding of reviewing, different terms for politicians and different offices that they held, and you're like, okay, how did this person make it better? How did they make it worse? Like, all that kind of information will help you make a better decision as you look at people going into higher offices or trying to stay in offices or whatever the situation may be. But it all starts, like I said, at your local and state level. So pay attention to those folks too. Investigate those folks. Do your research on those folks before you make a sound decision. So you can make a sound decision. And then you just go from there, man. Work your way up, looking at stuff, breaking it down, and having a clear understanding, like, all right, what is the deal with this stuff? What is going on? And then at the end of the day, if you've done everything you can to inform yourself and keep yourself knowledgeable about the things going on in the situations and stuff like that, make a move. Make a move, stand 10 toes down on it, and you just trug on through. You might piss some friends off. You might lose some friends. You might not talk to a family member or two, and situations like that, which I believe is unfortunate. And that's where, like I said, it goes back to like my pastor told me when he had the sermon. He was like, you can agree to disagree. Just because you have different political views don't mean that you should hate each other or you're not talking to each other. You vote for this person, something's wrong with you. You vote for this person, something's wrong with you. You need to get yourself together. You need to be voting for this person for this reason. Well, I'm not voting for him because of that, And it's a constant back and forth. Sometimes it feels like no matter what you do, some people feel like no matter what they do, no matter what decision they make, it's still a wrong decision, right? Just because they feel the whole system itself is corrupt and jacked up. I won't get into that because I am not one of those kind of folks. But I do watch and observe. I do look. I do my research. I do pull information just to have a better understanding. Like one thing that I always tell people to pull is look at executive orders from presidents. When you pull the information for executive orders, you can see what they signed in and what they got rid of, which is a fascinating thing because I don't think a lot of people take a peek at it. And then the same thing, like I said, when stuff is going through Congress and through the House, you can look at those bills and or those proposals and look at what is actually in there, because they can tell you, okay, hey, this is for us to have $5 million given to everybody, but also in there it's like stuff about just different things and how things should be done or whatever the situation is. And because that other stuff is in there, this thing of, hey, everybody's getting X, Y, and Z money doesn't go through, and then everybody's like, man, this person screwed. It happens like that all the time. But like I said, you have to be mindful. If you know the extra stuff that was in there, then you would know, hey, this is probably why I got shot down. It's not because of the big thing that everybody's putting the shine on. It's the little intricate details. It's the fine print that's there, right? When they say read the fine print, read the fine print. When you read the fine print, that's where all your information is. That's where your meat and potatoes is. That's where you know the stuff that they're saying is either real or it's false. So I say in closing on this particular podcast, which I never think I would do a podcast on politics, but like I said, it was kind of brief and light, but I believe hopefully it was informative to some folks to just do your research. That if you got nothing else from this podcast, just do your research. Dig, find out, get the information, and see, what's actually going on. Get your full clearance and understanding of what that situation is and how things should go. And I say signing off, this is Lewis, and I will catch you guys on the next go around. Appreciate you for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe. If you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, you can check this out on YouTube as well. Still not a video yet. Still might work on that at some point, but right now we're just doing the audio and getting that stuff rolling. So like I said, if you get it on YouTube, you can comment, I'll respond back as best I can. Like I said, it's not like there's a whole lot of people to respond back to, but share with your friends, like, listen, subscribe. Check in with you folks later. Have a good one.